All right, what's going on, guys? It's time for another sample breakdown. Today, we are going to take a look at something recent, and it's a vintage sample, but I'm not really even sure who it would work for. You guys can give me your thoughts on who you think it could work for. It's kind of like, I keep going down the like soulful Griselda, Rock Marcy, Alchemist, Larry June, like the soulful side of those guys, Conductor. We'll play through it and we'll break it down. So that's the main portion of the sample. I went ahead and, tracked it out a little bit so that there's a section with no lead vocal, a section with no drums, but that's essentially what we're working with. So where did we even start with this? I'm assuming probably the bass line. That's where I start a lot of times. You can see here I have two different basses on this one, and that's because, like I said in another recent video, this bass line kind of fell in an area where the lower octave was really low and the higher octave didn't have any low to it. So I have two octaves of the bass playing here. Okay, so here's the full bass line. Okay, so that's what the bass line sounds like. And then moving forward, we'll probably just take a look at the second half of the 16 bar loop, because everything else is basically just these first 4 bars and it repeats 3 times, and then there's that turnaround section. So bass line, changes up a little bit more than everything else. But as you can hear, the main portion of this sample is again just a simple back and forth chord progression. After that, the majority of the tones you'll hear are actually vocals and guitar. So we can break down the main guitar portion here first. This is guitar 1. So that is the kind of rhythm guitar there that's carrying the chords. It's carrying the sample along with the chords. And you can hear I'm just strumming a chord and then kind of picking around on different strings within the chord. No real thought or technique put into that. I'm just trying to get a little bit of a groove going in that 3/4 time signature. The next guitar part we have is this kind of lead guitar. And there's actually 2 different guitars, one going left and one going right. Pretty simple, but with all of the other guitar parts playing, because they have the strum and the picks going on, it really ends up sounding very complicated. And then the leads fall out for this turnaround. The lead effects chains are the same as the rhythm. They're just not going to the same bus so that they can be affected independently by the compressor. These each have their own track and their own effects chain, but it's just a copy and paste of what was on the rhythm. So the bass and guitars together sound like this. And then most of what we have left is actually vocals. So what I ended up doing here was figuring out my chords. We have a lot of stacked vocals going on here, so you can take a listen to that. And then I actually went back in and re-recorded them using my own voice through this mic. I re-recorded each note in the chord. So you can see here we have 6 tracks here. Here's 2 of the top note, 2 of each middle note and 2 of each low note. And that just helps bring a little bit more realism to these background vocals or choirs. A lot of times you can tell when it's just the plug-in choir. It just doesn't sound as good. It doesn't sound as real. There's not any kind of gliding or portamento going on between notes. So I like to stack the clean choir because there's a lot of voices and it's really clean and nice. I like to stack my vocals on top of that to make it sound a little bit more real. And you can hear how high a lot of those notes are. I did use vari-speed a lot in this project. You can see the project started at 160 and I actually vari-sped it down 1. I think when I was recording a lot of this stuff, I was vari-sped like down 4 semitones down to like 130 or something. And then I just brought it back up. So that is all of the melodic instruments other than this kind of lead vocal up top.
Ooh, Lord, and won't you, I want you, I want you, I want you, be my baby.
So the way that this came about may be a little controversial. You guys know that I am not a fan of AI. I'm not even a fan of AI in general, but I really don't like AI in the arts. I don't like AI being creative. However, I did use AI to transform my voice in this case. I felt okay with that because I sang the original part. The AI didn't actually do any creating, right? I used the AI to transform my voice the same way that auto-tune would do it, or the same way that Melodyne would transform your voice. AI didn't create anything, it just transformed my voice. What I did was I recorded again at a much lower tempo, and you can hear how high this sounds.
And won't you, I want you, I want you, I want you, be my baby.
So that was me singing at a much lower tempo and pitch. And then when I brought it back up in vari-speed, you know, it gives it that chipmunk soul sound. But I didn't really want the chipmunk vocals in this case. I wanted it to sound more natural, more of a natural tone. So I took it to Automy and I used their, you can see here, Jules. I used the Jules voice model to transform my original vocal into something that sounded more natural at this speed and tempo. So that's how it came out.
Ooh, Lord, and won't you, I want you, I want you, I want you, be my baby.
I wanted this last turnaround section to sound like it was chopped from a different part of the, you know, song that this sample came from. So I bounced it with the reverb on it and then cut it so that the reverb doesn't tail off into when it repeats. So it just makes it sound more like a real sample. You hear the reverb just cuts off, right? That's how it would be if you were chopping a record, right? The reverb tail from the vocal wouldn't tail off into a different section of the song. So there's no strings playing in the first section. There's only strings in this turnaround. Again, because I wanted to make it feel like it was chopped from a different part of the song. For the strings, we're just following the same chords that we have in the choir, which is a C and a D minor. So I'll solo that. And then you can hear the strings kind of falling off at the end there. And the same thing, I chopped it off at the end so that there's no bleed, there's no reverb tail or anything like that. And that is all of the instruments. So all of the melodic instruments. And the last thing we have here are the drums. And the drums, I did the same thing. I bounced the drum section so that the tail end of the toms and the cymbals and stuff didn't bleed over into the repeating section. It's not as noticeable on the drums on this one because it's a really, really tight kit that I made, but I wanted to try to be as diligent as I can when I'm trying to make these. We'll try to A/B this here so you can see before and after the mix bus and how big of a difference these plugins make. You can hear just how nice that top end sounds after adding all of that stuff in. It still doesn't sound like super, super high because I cut out everything above 10K. That top end just sounds so much better with that effects chain running, and everything's a little bit compressed and stuff like that. It didn't sound bad before at all. It does make a difference in the final mix for sure. But that is this whole sample. So I hope you guys like that one. Let me know who you hear on it. And as always, thank you for the support.
Ooh,